I think first that component that I had mentioned about change management, there's a lot of people that are like, it's secondary. Change management, something we don't really need to think about it. It will just happen. We have a great organization. And I'll say across the board, regardless of how great your organization is and how great your people are, supporting folks through change and making sure that they have that communication and that execution of change in a really strategic and aligned way is so important and often overlooked.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Liz Saville. She's the Director of Consulting Programs at BrainSell. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. It's great to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So, Liz, why don't you start and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am, as you mentioned, the Director of Consulting Programs over at BrainSell. So ultimately work on our consulting side of the house. And I come from a background of SaaS, so a passion for technology, but mostly a passion for process and all of the process that's necessary to support technology. Prior to BrainSell, I was working at HubSpot and found my way to BrainSell as it's a HubSpot partner, but they were building out their consulting program, and it's just the I guess the marriage of the two things I love the most, which are the technology, the process, and the data all coming together.
I love that. That's fantastic. And, a big component of BrainCell is growth, right? I think that's kind of the main core piece of BrainCell as a company. Talk to me a little bit about, how BrainCell is able to support its clients with what services, what software. Walk me through a little bit more what BrainCell does.
Absolutely. So I guess I'll start with the origin story. Our founder and CEO, Jim Ward, began the company almost 3 decades ago now, and it started as a value-added reseller. So reselling some software that was able to help folks get the right tooling they need for ERP, CRM, you name it. And ultimately, what Jim and others in the organization and my colleague Tony Berry were finding was that there's a lot of great technology out there, but great technology does not just necessitate success. There's a lot of other components there. So you can't just pick a great tool and then immediately wave the magic wand and you have a great successful implementation. There's a need for other kinds of support there. So that was the origin of this idea of a consulting work stream and really pivoting the company to position itself also as a consulting company and be able to look into the data, the technology, the process, the people that all make up an organization and support the rollout of successful digital transformations and help companies grow in that way.
And when you're talking about that growth and digital transformations, walk me through a little bit more specifically kind of what the services that BrainCell offers look like.
Yes, sure. I'm sorry, I neglected to answer that in the
Oh,
first question. So there are, of course, products that BrainCell partners with. On the consulting side, we're actually technology agnostic. So we make recommendations across an entire portfolio of technology. But from the services side, we are able to offer this idea of a solution blueprint, which is our primary focus on the consulting side. And ultimately, what that is a way for folks to press pause before they do a big technology investment or data transformation and be able to really evaluate all of those factors, have us have process mapping, conversation systems reviews, SME interviews, and dive deeper into the organization to understand where you are currently and what is your strategic and executive vision, and be able to really map out a roadmap and plan to get from A to Z.
Mhm. And I'm curious, Liz, do you think it's that kind of that consulting and then, the other services that you offer, it's those two components that really are able to differentiate BrainCell from its competition? I imagine there's more than one, but I'm assuming that may be one of them.
Yeah, you know what? I think that the technology agnostic approach on the consulting side is definitely something we don't come across often. So the obviously there's a lot of vendors that also offer consulting, but it's nice for us and the consulting team to really have that firewall between the sales team where we can offer things within our portfolio, outside of our portfolio, or even say, you know what, we think that this is the best way forward, and we're not the best people to help you with the next step. Some obviously there's many times that we are, but it's really great that we're firewalled from sales in that way. And I think that is unique. I'll also say a shout out to amazing team. I think that we do have, and I'm sure that everyone says that the team and the people are what differentiates it, but I think that across the board, that's so true. We have a team that approaches it from all angles so we can work together and really have a process expert on a service that we're helping our clients with. We can have a data expert, we can have a technology expert. So bringing all those areas of expertise that we really are able to bridge that gap between being specialists and generalists is another unique asset as well.
Mhm. And when you were talking, because I think you said Jim was the founder. Was I right in that?
Correct. Mhm.
Yeah. So when you're talking about Jim kind of in his own journey too, and like you said, in the time that you've seen at BrainCell, I imagine there's been growth, like you said, talking about, how your vertical, your technology agnostic or whatnot. Talking about that growth and what that has looked like. Walk me through a little bit about the growth that you've seen in your time at BrainCell and kind of what you've heard in the past as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that as far as growth just within the company, we are growing, we're hiring. So definitely check out our website as well. But I've been able to see our consulting team grow to be able to support so many different client needs, but also the different types of clients that we're working with. We used to have a niche that was a little bit more in the small and mid-size, and we're now even supporting clients as they go into that enterprise. So I think the ability to be able to grow and scale across all industries, across all different client sizes has been really great. And just being able to see the services be able to scale to support clients throughout their journey when they're just starting up all the way to their, billion-dollar revenue kind of sales. So it's exciting to be able to support them and grow alongside them throughout that.
I think that's fantastic. And when you're talking about the difference between, supporting those small to medium size, going to the enterprise level, what does that look like?
You know what? I think the bones are the same so often, and I think a big component of it is change management, and that's something that often is overlooked when you're talking about these kind of projects, but something that's so foundational. So I think having the executive buy-in and support across our clients, regardless of their size, is important in order to spearhead that change management internally and be open, willing to understand that things might shuffle and there might be some changes coming down, but really understanding that why and why this is important to the business. So I think that it's more similar than you think across the different sizes of the organizations where we have differences and where BrainCell can also help augment. Some of our larger organizations might have more of the internal help to be able to support these implementations after services, while some of our smaller clients might actually need to even work with us to see if they could have folks step into a admin role to be able to support, take a more heavy data engineering role. So that's really where we see the differences is how much we need to be embedded with the organization depending on where they are in their own growth journey.
And I imagine too, kind of depending on where they are in their own growth journey, like you said, impacts the challenges that they have before they start working with BrainCell.
That's a great point. Yes. So growth inflection point, I'd say, is the impetus of having a conversation with our consulting team in general, but the kinds of growth inflection point can be completely different depending on the organization and where they are. So we've had folks that have zero process or technology to support their sales or marketing team, for instance, and they're starting from scratch and they're like, hey, I don't want to make this huge thousands and thousands of dollar investment to then find out that it was the wrong fit for us or we didn't think through all the processes. And then we have other organizations that have so over engineered a solution and complex kind of technology that they've already had that it's almost how do we reconfigure and re-implement or dial back some of that as well? So those are just two extremes, but there's also generally user adoption issues, or maybe even just a misalignment from a process standpoint across different folks across the globe where they might be sitting. So that it runs the gamut. You're totally right, but it does depend on the size of the company and the industry that they're in and what we're seeing.
That's really interesting, and I'm curious to pick your brain a little bit, Liz, in your experience talking about, the customers that work with BrainSell, the industry in general. Do you hear a lot of, I don't want to call it like misinformation necessarily, but things that people are like, "Oh, this is the way that it is." And you're like, "Well, actually not really." Like, is there something that you hear often that you're like, "I would love the opportunity to kind of talk through right now?"
Another good question. Yes, I think first that component that I had mentioned about change management. There's a lot of people that are like, it's secondary. Change management, something we don't really need to think about it. It will just happen. We have a great organization, and I'll say across the board, regardless of how great your organization is and how great your people are, supporting folks through change and making sure that they have that communication and that execution of change in a really strategic and aligned way is so important and often overlooked. I also will say that some people do think technology is the solution. Like, hey, we spent X, Y, and Z on this like really big commercial software. There's no way that that's not going to set us up for success. We don't want to invest any additional money in a service because the software is going to be exactly what we need. And I think a lot of people think out of the box, the software is going to come to you and it's going to be exactly what your organization needs. And as we've been talking about, organizations are so different. And even if you try to keep a system pretty simple, you're going to need some configuration that makes sense for your organization. So there's not any tool that's a commercial out of the box software that's going to work on day one and run for your organization in a way that doesn't need significant governance. So I think that that's something that folks often are just understandably sold onto something that they think is going to be all the answers, and it could be part of the solution. It's just not the full solution.
Mhm. That's really interesting, and talking about change management as well, I imagine, some of the work that BrainCell does is, not to be funny, but is changing, how their brain is thinking about, change management.
Yeah. Definitely. Yes. I think that that's a big component too. And we're lucky to work with so many great organizations that the executive teams we work with see that. They understand it. They've lived it day to day. They understand that there might be some change resistance. And it's helpful sometimes to have that third party come in through some of these exercises that we do from the blueprint to be able to say, you know what, we're actually boots to the ground, seeing that there's some resistance or there's valid points of people being scared in this way or that way, and that helps us then bring it back to an executive team or leadership team to say, you know what, I think that for this reason and that reason, this is the best approach for us to go forward. So of course we're mindful of data process technology, but really also trying to be mindful of the people within an organization, the sentiments, how they're feeling, and not wanting to thrust change upon people in a really quick way if they're not there yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's an important piece too, and it sounds like, BrainCell is really making a conscious effort to be a partner to its clients, and, build that trust to be an extension of, the client's team.
Yes, I think in so many ways. And I mean, you and our mission is to help organizations grow and scale. And I think that in so many ways we get that opportunity and we get so invested. I mean, I have mentioned before, but I work with such a great team that we'll have internal conversations that we'll be just chatting about like, oh, like this is just exciting conversation for us to have. Like, oh, what if this organization tries this? We should think of that. And it's just we're all so passionate about the growth of the organization that it's fun to be able to think of it from all different avenues and really have so many heads all together really feeling like we're part of their organizational success and wanting to see them so successful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, Liz, I think this has been a great conversation. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, either about BrainCell, about change management, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
I guess from BrainSell, you can definitely find us on brainsell.com, and it's SELL.com. We also have, we're on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me or connect with our team on LinkedIn as well. I just say that we're here to help for any of your digital transformation or just talking through some of your processes internally to just help you be able to grow and scale and try to de-risk some of these investments that so many companies are trying to make on their journey of growth.
Well, Liz, I really appreciate you taking the time to break down, all the great things that BrainCell is doing. I think this has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Kelsey. Look forward to more conversations in the future.